Welcome to the Maple Leaf Hot Stove Podcast, episode 111. I'm Nick Ashbourne, joined as always by Anthony Petrielli. We are coming to you after a pretty unimpressive stretch by the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're talking about a 1-1-2, picking up 4 points over 4 games.
Let's
And
stretch it to five. It's one, two, and two.
well,
Like it, like
sure,
it's,
yeah, if you want to,
I guess
I'm
between
saying since we
episodes,
last
but it,
spoke,
it it's been a bad 5 game stretch.
absolutely. I mean, they've given up 6 goals in 3 of those 5 games. Like you said, the one win, that win didn't come in regulation. Difficult loss to the Red Wings. That feels significant. They're fighting in the standings. Obviously, the Red Wings are further up than them at this point. And I know that today you wanted to go a little bit bigger picture, talk about where this team sits, because from a standings perspective, I guess not a ton has changed. They're still really fighting for the bottom of the playoffs. But on the flip side, you're also seeing injuries pile up. Nylander got hurt since we last spoke. He's potentially out for a while now. We don't know what that looks like. As per is always the case with the Maple Leafs, there's some ambiguity here about what's going on, but we have an Ekman Larson injury, potentially a Carlo injury, and where they are in the standings is important, but it's also important what the team is. And right now, it's a team that's, Austin Matthews is rolling, but the team is kind of devastated by injury. And we're getting pretty close here to making decisions about where this season is going. What is the point of the 2025-26 Maple Leafs? And what does the trade deadline look like?
What is the point of the 2025, 2026 Toronto Maple Leafs? It's a good question. And, we tee up the episodes and we try to go through the games between and give thoughts and look at bigger picture, and I'll try to tie it together or, talk about certain themes or topics as we string together episodes. And we're kind of for me, we're at rubber meets the road time. We just mentioned like one, two, and two stretch, bleeding goals against. I actually thought they largely got goalied, at least for the first 40 minutes against Detroit.
Especially in the second with those
Yeah.
power plays. Like those were good power plays. You would have thought you'd get a goal out of them.
John Gibson's on one right now. He's been on one since he's been a top three goalie in the league for about 2 months now. So it wasn't like it was just the Leafs. Like John Gibson has been hot for a while now. So, I mean, kudos to him. But then the third period was terrible. They end up losing the game in overtime. We can talk a little bit more about the specifics of that game in a little bit, but then you kind of come out of it and Oliver Ekman-Larsson's hurt, and then it comes out that Brandon Carlo got hurt again somehow. Unbeknownst to everyone, Brandon Carlo somehow leads the league in completely random injuries that nobody saw happening at any point in time, and then finishes the game and then just somehow is hurt. So we'll see how that one plays out. And roundabout way of you finally get to it, and I think all of these things are true. So you can debate me on these. I think if the Leafs were actually healthy this year, I believe they're pretty firmly a playoff team. Chris Tanev has effectively he's unless he comes back, he's not even going to play an eighth of the season. When you kind of factor in the a few of the games he did play, he left hurt. William Nylander's now dipped under 75% of games played so far this year. He still leads them in scoring. And this is a guy who's been extremely durable for a very long time. He's played 82 games the last 3 years running and 81 the year before that. And now he can't stay healthy. The year they've needed him more than ever because Mitch Marner's gone, which does hurt them. And so he can't stay healthy. Chris Tanev, their best defenseman, basically right off of a season for him. I'm not going to speculate any further as to what that means for the rest of his career. I understand his age. I also understand, I still think he's a quality defenseman. Were he healthy, like were he able to come back healthy? I don't think his game relies on athleticism of any kind whatsoever. I could still see him being good. Maybe not as good, but I could still see him being good. We'll park Tanev. They haven't had their goalie tandem for even one single game this season. And I'm not sitting here just rolling out the excuses, but I don't think you can throw the baby out with the bathwater either. Like you have to look at things with some clear head. I think if they had some health, I don't know, would you fight me on that? Like I think they're pretty
Well,
I think they're almost a playoff team right now. And it's taken all those things. It's taken half a season of like screwing around with Mark Savard as the power play coach, doing made up things. You
and
know, like
and Matthews not being himself for the majority of the season. Like he's been great in
yeah.
January, but for the majority of the season,
Uh,
you thought he was going to step up or kind of bounce back from last year, and he didn't do that for most of the season. We've seen this thus far. And after all that, I think they're at a
yeah.
93 point pace right now, which is like,
Yeah.
95 points being kind of the rule of thumb. That doesn't guarantee to get you in the playoffs, but that often is enough to sneak in as a wild card. So they're just off. And as you said, it's not about, making excuses because there's a lot of things, there's some unforced errors here too, right? Like we often spend time on this podcast talking about Berube and
Oh
the
yeah.
coaching and the lineups and ways in which they don't make sense. I'm sure we're
Not
gonna.
even getting into the coaching part of it yet to say, hey, maybe if their coach didn't screw them around for 30 games, they would be, collected a few more points by now. I didn't even go down that road yet. I'm just the very simple ones that I think crystal clear people can understand. Nylander hasn't played. They haven't had a healthy goalie tandem once. Chris Tanem's their best defenseman. He's basically missed the whole year. It's like they played Minnesota. It's like, oh, Matt Boldy and Eric Sinek were out. It's like, okay. Chris Tanev and William Nylander were out. Did anyone care?
I think
Didn't
also when people say things like that, like when people do this exercise where they talk about, okay, here are all the things that went wrong. This is why a team is struggling. And it's very tempting to do this a lot of the time. On the flip side, they often fail to say, okay, here are the things that went right. Like they just get into that lane of like things are going badly, therefore here are the things that went wrong. And then they fail to acknowledge some of the things that probably went their way. And so it's not a one-sided thing. But with the Leafs, there's not that many things that you can point to and say, okay, this player has performed above expectations. Like I would say Dennis Hildeby coming in has been better than you would have
been good.
thought. Ekman
I,
Larson,
yeah, he's the
when
obvious one.
healthy,
He,
significantly better.
yeah.
And like to some
Y-
extent, like a little bit more from Easton Cowan, but also like this is not the day to say that based on what just happened. But like I was
It
skeptical he
hasn't been
could.
the day to say it for 2 months. I
Fair.
mean, he hasn't. This is what happened. We talked about this a million times. When you cut corners, developing guys, this is what happens, and this is the worst market to do it. I genuinely felt bad for him watching it because I know that obviously he feels like shit. It's a terrible play. He gets burned. He looked at the ref, which was embarrassing on it, right? It clearly wasn't a trip. He just got outmuscled by an elite defenseman, to be fair. It wasn't like it was, you name some other depth guy on their defense. It wasn't like Jacob Bernard Docker. It was
No,
Sider.
yeah, it was,
He's legit.
but still,
But
that shouldn't happen to you in the NHL. Like
no,
you can
but
know
that's
that.
what happens when you rush a kid and he's 20. And I felt bad for him. I looked at it and said, like, this is the coaching staff's fault. Like, why was he on the ice? And why didn't he develop a single day in the American League? Like that's what you're gonna get when you don't, unless you're a superstar, and he's not. He's a good player. I think he's gonna be legit. But unless you're a superstar, this is what it's gonna look like. And after the game, Ruby's like, yeah, he acknowledged, like, yeah, young player. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that you guys were at the point of the season where you can just screw around with young players in overtime and just see what happens. I didn't know that we were there. I thought you were in a battle for a playoff spot, not mystery box time with 20-year-old kid.
And that's, I'm not blaming Cowan for the other goal, but like both of the overtime goals this week, he's on the ice for. But and to finish my list, like
He was brutal on that goal too. I know Matthews took a lot of heat, but if you watch Cowan, it's like, why would you skate behind the net?
fair, yeah.
Why would you do that?
I think Matthews deserves the criticism though too.
I,
Like
I'm not
that was
I'm not admonishing Matthews. Like I'm not saying like he's good. I'm just saying you don't skate behind the net on that play.
sure,
That's that's
yeah.
bad. That's not proper hockey. There's no reason to follow him below the goal line.
But The only thing I want to add to my list is obviously again Troy Stetcher, and even recently there's
Sure.
been regression there for sure. Like he hasn't been as good lately as he was when which is also like totally fair because you can't expect Stetcher to
Yeah.
be that guy that he'd been for so long. But what like the broader point here is there's like a
Jake
very
McCabe probably falls in that boat too of like good but regressed lately. He's been bad for like 2 weeks now.
yeah, it's not been a good stretch for
But
him.
he's
But
had a
like
good year overall. Like if you look at his year, he's had a good
you'd
year.
expect him to have a good year. Like
Yeah.
the list of things have gone unexpectedly well for the Leafs is woefully short, and the list of things that have gone unexpectedly poorly is extremely long. And they're just
Yeah.
out of the playoffs. And they're just off the pace that you'd expect to make the playoffs with. So I think it is fair to characterize this as a bit of I don't know about, cursed is a loaded word, but like fair,
It,
like an unlucky season the way things have gone.
yeah. And so then that brings us to now where, we don't know as of the time of recording this, we don't know if or when Oliver Ekman-Larsson's going to return, if or when Brandon Carlo's going to return, if or when William Nylander's going to return. And you're in the middle of a 5-game homestand. And I paused because I was like, how do I want to frame this? I don't think they're going to beat Colorado. They would have been in
Probably
tough to
not.
beat Colorado with William Nylander and Ekman-Larsson and Brandon Carlo. I sure as hell don't think that they're going to beat Colorado twice in 2 weeks without those three guys. And like Joseph Wald has like a Norris Trophy level game, but he was really good against Detroit and they still lost that one. So I think that one's a loss coming up. And then that leaves you Vegas and Buffalo. And if you win those two, you salvage the homestand at best and you get 5 out of 10 points. It's not good.
Well,
But
yeah,
but
it's
think about that. That's what you need to happen, presuming a Colorado loss, which some people I'm sure will listen and say, like, screw that, that's not a guaranteed loss. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed loss. I'm just telling you, like, it's very unlikely the Leafs are beating Colorado twice. Unless Colorado gets some injuries between now and then as well. Maybe William Nylander returns, maybe a couple guys do, then fair enough. I'll take the Leafs to compete in that game then for sure. But without those guys, it's hard to see a path. And then you get a Western Canada road trip, which usually is daunting, but right now is about as mediocre as it gets. Vancouver's awful. Calgary's awful. Edmonton's obviously good and a problem, but I do think the Leafs owe them. Again, can the Leafs be healthy for that game? I don't know. And you have Seattle, who I definitely think the Leafs owe. They lost some in overtime. That was the Anthony Stolar's tired of guys, hitting me all the time, and Brandon Carlo just, buying a ticket for front row seat and watching it from the crease. So, you could see a run there. I don't want to sit here and try to predict, okay, they're going to win all, this game, this game, this game. They're going to lose that game. This is how the standings are going to kind of play out between now and the Olympics. But they they need to get points between now and the Olympics to me. Like that's the rubber that's meeting the road that I referenced at the beginning. It's like you're here now. Like at some point you got to kind of figure out the plan. And I tried to square that at the beginning by saying, "Hey, I think that this is a playoff team when healthy." And then to your point, like not very much has gone well for them this year, and they're still in the thick of it. It's like I heard Detroit talking. It's like, yeah, now we can beat teams like this. We kind of heard that quote from Sider. I'm like, okay, just to be clear, like the last two games you won in overtime, William Nylander didn't play either game. Detroit has been pretty much fully healthy the entire season so far. And one of the early games that you lost to or you beat the Leafs, you scored a goal in the final minute because a puck deflected off a skate right to Mason Appleton in a game where you got more than doubled up in shots on goal. If you think that's beating the Leafs, all the power to you. All the power to you. I
also
really don't think you beat the Leafs.
the
I think,
Leafs are like a fringe playoff team right now. Like that's pretty
yeah.
embarrassing. Like, oh, we can beat teams like this. It's like, what do you
But
mean
what's
like
beating them?
this?
You beat them in overtime twice and you got thoroughly dominated in another game and pulled it out of your ass. Okay. And they were missing their second best player and their best defenseman for half of those games. Like, congrats. I'd love to see the Leafs play Detroit without Moritz Seider. with Chris Tanev and William Nylander in the lineup and see how that one goes. For like, so that's why I look at them and say, like, hey, I think this is a playoff team if they're healthy. I would take the Leafs to beat a lot of teams. I think we've seen those glimpses at times where they have had a healthy lineup. You know, the Vegas game is probably the best example, even though you only had about 5 minutes of it before Nylander got hurt. But you were watching the first little bit there with Nylander humming and the rest of their lines and the way they were building offensively. And it was about as healthy as we've seen the defense given the Chris Tanev situation. And you went there, you watched and went like, wow, like they're good. Like this is a good hockey team. And they're in it. You know, there were large stretches of the Colorado game where we're like, yeah, like they're good. Like they're not hanging on for dear life winning. Like they're playing hockey and they're getting after it. I just at some point the injuries become too much, and you're kind of in this window right now where you're going to have a break during the Olympics to really think about it. But you know, if guys aren't coming back and you just keep losing games, at some point you're going to have to call it. Like you're going to have to make a decision to call it. We talked last week where, hey, I'd keep Scott Laughton and Bobby McMahon. I still would. That hasn't changed. But you really need to get that done. Either you sign them or you got to move on from them. And the thing that we didn't talk about, which I think will come into play, especially depending on how this next stretch of games goes, is it's not even what's your confidence level in Brad Treliving. It's what's your confidence level that he's still the general manager if they don't make the playoffs.
It's not high. It's not high. And I understand the excuses, like, the excuses, the reasoning that we could point to that this has been a bad luck season for them. But he's also stood by a coach who's played a role, I would say, in some of the underperformance. And if you look at his signature trades, right, the signature trades for him are the Carlo and Lawton deals. And to Lawton's credit, he's brought his game up and he's become an important contributor to the team. But you could still argue that that ended up being a really high price. Obviously, Carlo ended up being a high price. The price is going to look worse if they end up as sellers and they end up giving Boston a really nice pick there. So when you look at the whole picture and you say, okay, not only did the Leafs miss the playoffs, they also made these trades and they gave up a draft pick that is going to be, potentially a good player, or at least has a good chance to become a good player. We know that there's a lottery aspect of that. Like that, looking at Treliving's resume, and this is the coach he took on, and this is the coach he stood by. I don't feel good about it. Like my personal thought is that Treliving is about as replacement level a general manager as it gets. Like I don't think he's completely incompetent. I don't think that he increases their chances of winning compared to any, whatever executive you're going to pick off the street. But this incentive about him wanting to preserve his own job, I do think is relevant.
And that's where we get to it, right? Like I don't know what the sentiment is amongst the fan base. Sometimes you feel like you have a good idea and sometimes you don't. I could actually take this being considered a flush it year. Where they just say, you know what? Ton of injuries, just shitty luck, but we have to be honest about it. Like you can't keep fighting it. That's what it felt like with the injuries to me after the game. And then you wake up the next morning, it's like, oh yeah, Brandon Carlo also was hurt. So, oh, okay. Sure, why not? I mean, who didn't get hurt? Matthew Knies playing hurt, has been terrible for a month.
Oh,
They're
he
like,
looks
hey,
so bad out there.
but
I
hey, you
mean,
got to play 19 minutes
tangent.
against Minnesota while you guys are getting absolutely lit up. Glad you played 19 plus in that one. I can't believe that didn't work out for you. I I don't know what was more surprising. The fact that that didn't work out or the fact that the Michelli Robertson Riley trio in overtime got
the
absolutely
the
dominated
fact
for
that that trio
it's
was on
like
the ice at any point, like, and I get it that
so
minus
that's
OEL minus Nylander, like your lines in overtime are not, you don't have as many options, but that is not an option you ever need to reach for. Like
no.
I'd rather see Lawton Lorenz out there than
Yeah. But
that pair of forwards.
look, if they said, look, we're shutting it down, it's a reset. And I'm not fully there yet. I'm not advocating for this. I'm saying depending on this next upcoming stretch, like I want to be honest with people. Like to me, like this is the stretch. It's like right now, do you guys want to do you guys want to keep this thing together? Are guys gonna gut it out and start getting results here? Or are you gonna get, you know, turned over on this homestand and then go to Western Canada and then what? We're all supposed to sit here for a month while the Olympics is going on and then come back and be told, yeah, we're going for it anyway. It being making the playoffs. Because you don't have a lot of time after that. You come back from the Olympics and you're immediately greeted by Tampa, Florida, in Tampa, Florida, and then a home game against Ottawa, and then a run of what? Philly, New Jersey, and New York. So it's like 6 games in a week and a half or 2 weeks, and then it's the trade deadline. So, like these are massive games. Like the Vegas game is going to get a lot of play because of Mitch Marner, but it's just a massive 2 points for the Leafs at this point. Like winning that game, and Vegas is playing the night before, and they're on the road the way the Leafs were. So I don't know. The injuries only go so far, and they are a big deal. I think people are downplaying the significance of injuries. I think when other teams come into Toronto or play Toronto and they're injured, it's always like, oh, this guy was missing and that guy was missing. And it's like all year I'm like, the Leafs have been missing guys all year. No, like no one sat there after they lost to Detroit and was like, oh man, look at what the Leafs weren't missing,
Yeah, and
Best like leading scorer, best defenseman.
it's also where those
Like,
injuries are hitting, right? Like if you could
yeah,
allocate the guys who are going to get injured up and down the lineup and you could spread it out, it would be easier to manage. But like right now, it's just a blue line that's devastated.
yeah,
The blue line is devastated, and the blue line is already the weakness of the team.
yeah. They
And
played
the
that game with 5 defense. You could
and
argue Easton Cowan's not even in that lineup if even just Dakota Joshua was healthy.
Potentially. And you think about okay, like think about the defense right now. Like let's assume Carlo and OEL are not available.
It's
Like
just hard to see them getting points at that point.
yeah,
That's
because
just the reality.
the veterans that you're leaning on are Jake McCabe struggling right now, Morgan Riley, not a good season, struggling in a general sense, arguably overexposed, but just like
That
not
was a
someone you're
light that was a light comment there on
okay. Yeah,
Riley, Nick, but I'll take it.
we'll put
I
it
get
this way, like it's not someone you think, oh, okay, the defense is in good hands. At
yeah.
least Morgan
Can't,
Riley is still there.
can't wait to toss him 26 and see how that goes.
And
That's
then, yeah,
a
Troy
tough that's a tough sell.
Stetcher, who has not been as good lately. I think has been a little bit too ambitious lately. Like
No, I
he's
think they screwed him around like that. Like, again, you kind of circle back to the coaching staffs. Why would you pair him with Benoit?
yeah, it's not a good
He's
pairing.
clearly been one of your 4 best defensemen. Whether you like it or not, he has been.
But
And
those
he's
right
clearly the
now
best fit to play with McCabe.
for sure. And they should do that for a significant period of time. But like those are your three like
They
veteran guys you
didn't.
can count on right now in theory. Like that is grim. That's really and like as much as you can argue like Carlo hasn't played well this year, there's plenty of criticism there. Like, OEL's been huge, obviously. But when those three guys and then you're kind of patchworking around that, man, that's tough.
That was Carlo's worst game against Detroit since returning, I thought, by a pretty significant margin. I think he's been fine to solid otherwise since returning. I mean, you would happily
Yeah,
take him.
his struggles were more at the beginning of the season than more
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, like I could, if he's playing, I wouldn't feel great about it to be clear, but I could take McCabe, Stetcher, Riley, Carlo, Benoit, Benning, not against Colorado, but against Vegas who played the night before. I could take that
Yeah,
for a night and be like, okay,
we'll see what happens with Carlo. Again, like this is in some ways a bit of a bad timing because we don't know exactly the extent of that situation. But when the injuries hit on the place that's already an issue, right? Like we quoted some of those, the fact they've given up 6 goals in 3 of the last 5 games, and the goaltending is fine to good, like from both guys. Like they're giving up a ton of goals, and the goaltending is fine to good. And it's not like forwards don't have anything to do with the defense. Like you know, I think Matthews has had
I
some
feel
tough
like when you
moments
give up
recently in that
six,
line.
I feel
But
like when you give up 6, like it's okay to make a save, like to
yeah,
be good. I like, Yeah,
For sure. And there, we can
no
point to
fault on the
individual
Detroit game.
goals and say, like, oh, Wolves should have had this. Like, I don't think Wolves having the best stretch of his season, but like the defense is clearly the pain point, and it just got so much worse. And it's just tricky to envision a scenario where they go on the kind of run that they sort of need with the defense ailing this badly. Now, OEL has given us a really bad injury scare before and then kind of bounced back quickly. So we'll see
It's true.
how that looks. Like if OEL is, maybe out a game or two or something like that, that definitely changes the situation. But it seemed like not great vibes in the early going of the injury mystery morass that is the Toronto Maple Leafs at any given time. Like you got to
They're,
read tea leaves with them.
they're such it's just I just find them in such a weird spot in general, in the sense that, hey, if you said they were going to be healthy even after this weekend, not even these next few games, you said starting Monday, Leafs are healthy. Nylander's back, Ekman Larsson's okay. Brandon Carlo got over his second mystery ghost injury. I'd say okay. I think they're gonna, provided they stay healthy from that point forward, I think they make the playoffs. I'd feel pretty good about it. I would. Anthony Stolarz, I should include in that as well. It's like, okay, get the goalie tandem back, get these guys rolling, so on and so forth. Let's go. I think they make it. John Tavares will come back after the Olympic break, look significantly better. All these things.
Nice, potentially.
Yeah, not, but I mean, I hope so. You're 23 years old. You get a 2.5 week break. You better come back ready to go. I don't know what you're waiting for other than that. So, and then I look at it and people say, well, what's the point? Like they're not contenders. What's the point of making the playoffs? I Who's good in the East? Tampa's good.
Tampa.
Tampa's genuinely good. And the weird thing about that is Tampa's the one team the Leafs seem to have their number. I can't explain it, but they do. And they have for years now. They don't have a problem with their goaltending. It makes no sense. But they have their number. That doesn't mean that the Leafs would beat them in a playoff
Yeah,
series.
I
You
wouldn't
know,
be counting on that if that
uh,
is that the number they drew. I wouldn't be
like
counting on that.
Ottawa felt that they had the Leafs number. They swept them last year in the regular season. And then the playoffs started and it was like, okay, time for the big boys to actually do this. Like stop. This has been fun in games, but the nonsense is over. And the Leafs raced out to the start that they did against them. So it's not to say that the Leafs would be fine against Tampa. Tampa would be a massive problem, clearly. But again, I think you feel okay about that. I don't think they're completely outclassed in that matchup by any means if the Leafs are healthy. And that's without Tanev. And then you look at beyond Tampa, and who else is good? Carolina banking on Brandon Bussi,
Yeah,
who's
I mean,
been great, but I
I
mean,
would say Tampa tier gap and then Carolina and then another gap and then it's all just a haze at that point.
yeah, so it's mediocre. It's not like you're in the West and you're going, you kind of hear you heard Doug Armstrong with St. Louis, who was yeah, I don't want to make the playoffs to play an extra 10 days and get swept by Colorado. Like you're looking at that, you're going like wagon. Then you look at Dallas and Edmonton and Minnesota and Vegas and the depth is not there in the West at all. Like half the West is actively terrible. But the
But
top
those
teams,
five teams are legit.
yeah, the top teams are legit. I'm not looking at anybody in the East saying that.
I
It's,
think that
you know,
that's part of, when you talk about like, sort of what is the direction for the Leafs at the deadline, what's a reasonable hope for this team? Part of the reason
get
why,
healthy.
well, yeah, but
That's
part
the
of
first.
the reason why it doesn't feel like this massive dilemma where it's like, are they going to make the bad decision or, what are they going to do here? How much, is Treliving going to be selfish or whatever? Like there is not that much upside to selling because, you've got McMahon, you've got Lawton. I'm not saying you can't get anything for those players. Ekman Larson would be an interesting case if he's healthy because you could make a sell high argument for him. He's been really valuable. He'd be worth something. But it's not a situation where they have a ton of expiring contracts, a ton of pieces that people want, I don't think realistically. And so if you're Treliving, the way I can see him approaching it is there's not a ton of upside on the more sell side of this equation. So
I don't
he
know.
could
I'd
feel
argue
like
that. I'd argue you on that. I think they would get pretty decent returns for Lawton and McMahon. And then you would obviously shop around some defensemen with term on reason like you would be shop you if someone was really getting after it, you would try to shop Ekman Larson and Carlo and see what you get. Like they have three goalies. I think you could do reasonably well.
I don't know. I mean, yes, on
You
I
think if
think
Ekman
McMahon will
Larson's
be
healthy, you don't think he's getting a
Ekman
ton?
Larson will be good. If you do Ekman Larson, that'd be, I mean, that was part of the Ekman Larson injury. And again, we don't know the exact extent that I thought was a bit painful for the Leafs, where it's like Ekman Larson being out vastly increases the chance that they should be thinking of themselves as sellers, but he would arguably be their best. I mean, I think he would be their best piece to sell. So it's
Yeah.
like the guy who makes you in a tough position where you're thinking of that is the guy that you'd want to be healthy enough to actually sell him and get something good for him.
Uh,
Maybe I'm oversaying that, but I do think the combination of the East being relatively weak, the Leafs being a team that, you know, generally speaking, there's a lot of revenue in it for the Leafs if they're in the playoffs. They've been in the playoffs for so long, like they
Roll
think
my
of
eyes when
themselves
I
as
hear
that.
that. I don't care about MLSC making some gate. I know
I'm
they do,
not
but
saying that I care. I'm just saying about like how they're thinking about it. Like I think that they are
it's
a
so
team that
small-minded though. Like it's such
that
loser shit.
leans being
It
competitive.
it is. It's so small-minded. It's like, yeah, can we squeak out these little gate revenue in round one? It's like, use your brain. Have a bigger picture in mind. Have a standard. But it's such a weird spot because I sit there, I think all these things are true. I think were they healthy or like notably healthier this year, which I don't think is an unreasonable thing to say. Like you didn't even get 40 games out of Tanev. 50 games. Like that's not an unreasonable number you're gonna get, what does he play? 11 games? Two of them he left hurt right away. So I think if they were healthy, I think they're a playoff team.
I
I think
mean,
if they were healthy from this point forward, I still think they'd be a playoff team. I think if they make the playoffs, the East is wide open and generally kind of crappy. At the same time, I think they're really hurt right now. It's really hard to see them collecting points against the schedule they have coming up, given those injuries. And the trade deadline's right around the corner, given the Olympics. And then you square all of that further to say, well, does Tree Living have the stones to just come out publicly and say, you know what? Not our year. If that's the way that it goes, we're going to reset, flush it this offseason, and come back better next year. I could actually take that. I think a lot of fans would take that if they did that well. Like, I don't think people are stupid. If that was the direction it had to go, and I'm talking, what, 8 games here before the Olympics, they lose 5 of them, Nick. And they go, you know what? The injuries, this, that, whatever, it's just not happening. And, at best, we can hope to get healthy over the break and squeak into the playoffs, but we can't risk it with the little assets that we currently have in our cupboards. And so we need to sell a little bit given that. And if you made a few good trades selling guys off, I genuinely think a lot of fans would sit there and they'd understand. I think you'd get a lot of stupid stuff about, Matthews couldn't lead them to the playoffs and this crap and that crap. But as long as you can ignore that nonsense, I think you could just sit there and say, you know what, it wasn't our year. Let's kind of just clean it up. We'll reset in the summer and we'll come back ready to go next season with a point to prove. Like I think all those things could happen. I think, in terms of like getting healthy, making the playoffs, being fairly competitive in middling Eastern Conference with zero superpower teams. And I also think, hey, like at some point here, it's just not going your way. And you have to have a bigger picture in mind. And that just tees up this 8 game run to say you kind of gotta pick a lane here. You can't do this crap where you're just, you're in that mushy middle. You need to have a vision. And and like execute something and stand for something. It can't just be fingers crossed. We're JFJ hoping, we're the Fergler. We're John Ferguson Jr. We're just praying we make the playoffs the last day of the season.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at is this the Leafs Eurometer right now? Like, it's not looking good.
And
It's
that and then
not.
you sit there and you say sometimes those are the years that ends up being the year.
Yeah, it's not looking good. We're 50 games into the season, and the path of them doing something like not only making the playoffs, but doing something interesting in the playoffs, doing some kind of run that would justify all the misery that's come before, it's extremely unlikely. And I do think you make a good point about the state of the franchise's assets, which, it gets talked about ad nauseum. Whenever we talk about the Leafs adding something, it's always like, what do they have to trade? They've traded away all their draft picks. The farm system is not in a place where they have prospects that are of interest to other teams. I think that is a good argument. And if they
Well,
do
they
go
have
in this,
two, but they probably shouldn't trade either one.
yeah, if they go this path, that I think that is one of the better arguments of like, listen, we need to reload. It's not necessarily about we're going to be shit next year or the year after, and like we're going into a doom spiral here and we're tearing it all down. A little bit of it can be like, listen, we need stuff that we might trade in the future to try and be good as soon as like in the off season or next trade deadline, because
Kiefer
these
Sherwood
issues
just got
are,
traded. They couldn't even enter that
oh,
market.
no,
They didn't have
absolutely not.
anything to do to enter that market with. And it's
No.
Kiefer
So
Sherwood.
now, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Kiefer Sherwood, I think they can get
He,
enough assets to be back
he,
in the Sherwood zone next year if they want to
he
be, for sure.
he's a
But you're
nice
not going
player.
back.
It's not a knock. It's just to say that you don't even have enough to pull off that trade.
Yeah. Or, let alone, the Quinn Hughes sweepstakes, right? Like if a really prominent player becomes available, the Leafs are not in it for that player just right now with
No,
where they
yeah.
sit.
No.
And maybe they could be. Maybe I don't think Quinn Hughes is like that's a different level. Like that type of player is rarely available. But like, if we come down a little bit, I don't know, into like the Panarin rental zone, which again is not something that Leafs are going to do this year, but like the version of that would happen next year in the future, maybe you can acquire enough assets back that you feel like you're okay there. But like I don't know, let's say that they did trade an Ekman Larson, for instance, and I think this is a great time to sell high if you can get him healthy and people believe that like he's good to go.
Yeah.
Great time to sell high on Ekman Larson. You're gonna have a hard time like if you trade the Lautons and McMahons who are expiring contracts, that makes sense to me. Ekman Larson, I think, again, intellectually speaking, absolutely. The guy's at the peak of his value. I can't imagine him having a better season next year. I just, they are going to be in a very difficult spot in terms of building out a blue line if they move Ekman Larson at this, at the deadline or during the season. And again, it might be that he's so injured that none of this matters, but the road from where the Leafs are now to a decent blue line is tough without him. And again, we don't know about Tanev next year, so that makes it harder to kind of answer that question and explore that. But yeah, it could get
Yeah, I mean,
rough.
we could wake up right after recording this and it's like, actually, you know what? Carlo and Ekman Larson are good. And great. I hope that they are. I hope that's exactly what happens and they play well and they collect points. And the next time we record, it's like, okay, we're back to basically the baseline Lawton McMahon conversation of either sign over the next month or trade them. And then kind of just go from there. Because again, like they get healthy. I could easily see it pieced together that way. Like what? Oh, you're gonna move to the Metro and play Carolina, and then the winner of what? Pittsburgh versus the Islanders?
It's appealing. I mean,
That
it's
I
something that
mean,
Leafs fans have wanted for a long time, in a sense. They're like sick of that
yeah,
Atlantic, and it's not
you,
the same these days with the
it,
Bruins not being the same team, but
it's not an unreasonable thing to sit there and say, yeah, that's actually, I'll take that. I would sign for that right now, obviously. Someone
well,
said,
yeah,
yeah, you'll,
fair enough.
right? Like you'll get, Chris Tanev won't return, but everyone else will be healthy, and you're gonna go play Carolina round one. Again, I'm not saying the Leafs will beat them, but I would take that. I'd be like, okay, let's see how that goes. The Leafs have the best goalie in the series, and they have the best two players in the series, or the best two forwards anyway. You could argue Slavin. Beyond that, the Leafs have the two best forwards in the series and the best goalie. That usually
It's not a bad starting
That
point.
usually bodes well for you. Stylistically, I don't love the fit because Carolina's going to be in their zone all night. But I think you could see a path there. You're like, okay. And then at the same time, it's like, well, is anyone going to get healthy in the meantime so you can collect the necessary points in order to make the playoffs and put yourself in that position? And again, that's sort of where we're at. So yeah, I look at these as for me, like the next 8 games of the season. I just don't think the Leafs are thinking like that. And then that's my concern is you can almost not even blame Tree Living, like just as a human being. You cannot blame him if it's like, well, if I like throw the white flag on this season, like I'm gonna get fired in like 2 months. Who the hell would do that? In their right mind, who's gonna sit there and say, yeah, you know what? Let me just die on the sword because I listened to Craig Berube about Mark Savard for 3 months before I had to poke my eyes out and just do it myself. And I had to watch Chris Tanev get hurt and miss the whole year. And I had to watch William Nylander get hurt celebrating a goal. But I got to be the one that falls on my sword and get fired for it while all these guys get walked back next year. I could sit there and if I had Brad and go, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like,
Yeah. As
but
much as
that,
they need those assets, like we just said, how much do you want to be like, man, I'm gonna get fired so I can get that 2027 second round pick? Like
yeah,
I'd
yeah,
love to be unemployed for that pick so that the
yeah. Like,
franchise can have it.
yeah. Do I risk getting fired? Or do I keep Scott Lawton and not take that second round pick and prospect that I will never see wear a Leafs jersey in my lifetime while I work here?
But
So,
he knows more about where he's at job security, obviously, than we do. Where do you stand on the three goalie situation? I've seen a lot of stories about this, because Stolarz is on his way back. And, first of all, I think we often overestimate the value of an additional goal, like in the trade market. Like, other than the best of the best goalies, it is hard to get a lot for one of these guys. I also saw some notions of them carrying three goalies on the roster, which I just don't see and I don't think makes sense. And like the idea of having Hildeby play in the A for some time does not offend me as a human being, even though he's been effective in the NHL here. I guess that's one of the things that Treliving can, in theory, do that benefits them in terms of acquiring assets and doesn't necessarily negatively affect their chances of making the playoffs too much, is move off one of the goaltenders. But I just don't really see it as a needle moving situation.
yeah, it's interesting because they were sort of in this spot last season, right? With Stolarz got hurt, or they call it a pebble in his knee.
Mhm.
Um, Kind of funny to think about. But not that there was pebble or whatever, just like the way, it's hurt again, same kind of time period. And I thought Joseph Woll did really well in his absence, like as well as you could have reasonably hoped for. I thought he was good. And at that point, I was like, I think this is like Woll's the guy. Stolarz got hurt again. Woll stepped up in his absence and kind of carried the mail. And if you remember when Stolarz came back, he went on like a 9-game heater. Won like 9 in a row. And that was large reason why they won the division. And as someone who really likes Woll and really believes in him, I just sat there too eventually. I was like, well, it has to be Stolarz. Like he just keeps winning games. Like he's the guy until he's not now. Like he's earned it. He's stolen the net from him. And so I think about that again now, where I just look and say, yeah, if Stolarz is back, then you're back to the Stolarz Woll tandem. Like you don't have to do anything crazy. You can send Hill to you're not making any difficult decisions, in my opinion, unless Stolarz plays terrible hockey. Because you're going to send Hill to be down to the minors. You can do it. You have no issues. Like you can
Yeah, they
clearly
structured
figure
that
things
contract
out.
the way they structured it for a reason.
Yeah. So it's not like you're sitting there going, well, I got to risk exposing him to waivers. You're not. You're just sending him down. He's going to carry the mail for them. It's going to suck for him because he played well. And then it's go back to riding the bus. That sucks. That's a tough break if you're
But
Hill to
that's
be.
also what he signed up for on his
Yeah.
contract. Like he
And
knew the role that he had.
and that's life. Hey, the two guys in front of him also grinded their time up to get to the league. And look, you've paid Stolarz. You believe in him. He's clearly talented. He's been hurt all year. It's basically been a lost year for him at this point. Terrible before the injury, hurt, missing months on end, uh, to me, that's when you look at a guy and you say, like, all right, like I almost want to say you owe us. You know, it's like you owe us. Like you haven't done anything this year. Like now you have to carry your end of the bargain. We've done our part. You've been paid. We extended you. You have job security. You got best in class medical support because it's not the sports science department, it's the actual medical department. And now it's your turn. So I don't even think it's controversial. I don't know why people seem to think that it might be. If Stolarz comes back and he's terrible for like 5 games in a row, then yeah, now you got a problem on your hands. But I think he gets the opportunity to show otherwise.
Yeah, I think that people are too quick to give up on Stolarz. He had, a rough stretch. He's played 13 games this season. And before that, and I know that his track record is kind of odd and he's been a bit of a journeyman and it's not like he's been an incredible goalie for an extended period of time. But generally speaking, most seasons, even in backup roles, he's been good. And in the 2 seasons prior to this one, he's been one of the best goalies in the NHL on a per game basis. And, the durability, the role, you can talk about all that. But like, again, you talk about him being talented. I don't think that's in dispute. And he was rough at the beginning of the season. He might come back. And as you said, he could come back and it's a dud. It's a bad year for him. He's not on, and you can explore what you do after that. But it does feel like people have attached themselves to the idea that, okay, Hildeby is good now and Stolarz is can't be trusted and he's going to be bad. And I just don't think either of those assumptions is particularly fair. And I'm not saying I don't like what I've seen from Hildeby, and he's huge. I like that. It's a characteristic you can count on every single game. But, it's not like Hildeby was the most highly touted young goaltender of all time, and we're all just assuming that he's going to ascend, and it's just a matter of him getting experience. He's an interesting goaltending prospect, but Stolarz has very much done it. And yeah, the idea of sending Hildeby down and keeping Stolarz up seems easy to me, and the idea of trading from that surplus doesn't sound like a good idea to me just because we know what's happened with Stolarz and Woll, both of them in the past from a health perspective. Like having all three goaltenders in this organization seems like a good idea. Having them all in the roster at the same time, again, I don't want to straw man
No.
that because that's something I just saw in one place. I don't think that's a widely held view, but that doesn't really make any sense to me. But having them all in the organization, I think absolutely
Ha-
does.
Having 3 goalies up in the with one team is terrible. Every single goalie history of all time will tell you that. It's awful. As a coach, you don't like it. You're like, what am I doing with these guys in practice? I got to rotate one.
Yeah, and if
Like,
one
it's
guy
just shit.
struggles a little bit, it's just so easy to bury them, and then they're like never playing, and then you're like, why do I have them up here at all?
Yeah.
It's too many choices, too many
And
options.
Wool is good.
Yeah.
You know, like if Wool has to be the guy, then he's still going to end up being the guy, whether it's Stolarz or Hildeby. What you hope is Stolarz is actually good enough right this second when he's healthy to come in and like steal the net from Wool. Like they could both play really well, and Stolarz could just flat out play better than him. There's no planet right now where Hildeby's doing that. Hildeby has been good, and he still can't take the net from Wool right. Like it's just not happening. So you need to hope that those guys both come back, or sorry, you need to hope that Stolarz comes back and it elevates the play of both of them and the bottom line there, where it's like Wool is playing to keep his net and Stolarz is coming after him in a healthy, competitive way that just helps the bottom line for the Leafs. Especially if when we're looking at the defense. Like I don't think it's to me it's not too much of a story. I think the one that is a bit more interesting is Easton Cowan because if William Nylander comes back, or when he comes back, he's going to come back. Like, should he be in the lineup? And if he's not, are they really going to send him down at this point? And can they just not play him, period? I don't think any of those things are, justifiable other than him not playing in the lineup. Like, you can't have him just sitting watching.
Yeah, it's a very tricky situation. And I think right now They feel like he can create something. The second line at the moment is doing nothing. Like, Nyes has been awful. Tavares is
Terrible.
not going like that. As much as we like to praise Michelli, like he's fun, but a lot of opportunities have died on his stick in the last few games. Like he's had a lot of grade A chances, and you're like, oh, true, this guy actually doesn't finish at all.
What was the Babcock line? Fun but dumb. It's fun
Yeah,
but dumb. At times it's fun but dumb.
the
I
two
still can't believe he didn't pass it to Matthews on that 2-on-1.
Yeah, that was hilarious. But I sort of get the idea that at some point you have to not pass to Matthews so that next time and arguably like the next seven times you do, it's kind of like the overtime goal that Domi scored where the goalie and defenseman are so convinced that Matthews is going to shoot that puck that they don't really honor Domi and he's able to score and win the game. So I'm not going to blame Michelli too much for that. I get it. But the second line is not producing anything. The fourth line is designed to just pretty much play defense at this point. And so I think they really hope that that third line with Robertson and Waugh and Cowan can give them a little bit of juice. And there are moments, Cowan does some interesting things with the puck. He has his moments, but it's been a bit of a tough watch recently. And Nylander, as you said, Nylander is probably going to come back at some point in the relatively near future. That's going to get the second line humming, presumably to some degree.
It's gonna get them
And
scoring. What humming looks like with Nylander and Tavares, I don't know, but he's gonna put the puck in the net.
it's gonna, yeah, production will ensue. Whatever the shape of that looks like, you can debate among yourselves. And then I think the need for this is kind of supposed spark that Cowan brings to the lineup won't be as acute, right? Like in a world where Nylander is available for overtime, Cowan shouldn't be out there. Those type of things. Yeah, it's tough. Like sending him back to the A at this point would feel
It's
like
not
an
even
odd.
sending him back. It's sending him for the first time
Well,
ever.
yeah, sending him for the first time would be odd. You and I both in agreement at the beginning of the season that he probably should have had a taste of that level.
What
Didn't
have you
happen.
seen? What have you seen that has anything changed? Nothing's changed my opinion on it. He's had a few moments to be
I
sure.
think he has
The
been better than I thought, but my expectations were fairly low. And the play has deteriorated a little bit of late, maybe more than a little bit.
which is natural. It's going to deteriorate for anybody. I
Yeah,
just, you
like
know,
the rookie wall is a known
yeah.
phenomenon. Like this happens.
But did you have to put him through this ringer like this? Is my question and concern. And ultimately, will we look back and say it was worth it? I don't know.
That I
You look,
think that is going to be unknowable, right? Because if you talk to him, I'm sure he'd say like it was so valuable to get
yeah,
that
I learned
time
so
in the
much.
NHL, but it was so valuable to cash those paychecks, etc. Um,
Hey, I don't begrudge that. Good for him. Like
no,
he's
obviously he would
killing
want to
it.
be in the NHL, so I'm sure he
Who
thinks about
wouldn't?
it in a positive way. But
I mean, by any metrics, like, yeah, do you want to eat better? Do you want to travel better? Do you want to go to cooler cities? Like, do you want to go to Rochester? Do you want to go to New York? Play at
well,
MSG? Like, which one do you think's better, Nick? Of
in
course.
3 years we won't be able to see a play and we'll be like, oh, that's the play that he would have made if he'd had that AHL seasoning. Like that'll be really hard to identify. Like we're gonna not really know if this, or we might see him do something amazing and be like, oh wow, the fact he was young in the NHL, maybe that did help. I'm skeptical. I know you're skeptical, but it is just one of those things where this seems like the wrong choice. It seems like they've done the wrong thing.
It's
We
just a
don't know.
situational hockey for me. I looked at when I look at him in London, he was a great penalty killer. Obviously, he ran the power play. He played in every situation. That's not happening here. And nor should it. Like they played at the end there to get to overtime, which is an entirely different problem altogether. He does not touch in the ice. He shouldn't have been on in overtime. We saw how that went. He's definitely not touching the ice in the penalty kill here. And so if you do put him in those situations moving forward, it's not like a natural progression to it. It's all of a sudden you're thrown back in and it's something you're not really accustomed to at this level and you haven't built any confidence or development in those situations or allowed him to make mistakes in a much safer environment. Now he's making those mistakes in the public limelight I'm sure he had just a terrible night last night. Like I'm sure going home sucked. I'm sure going to bed sucked. I'm sure waking up sucked. Like that's terrible. I mean, that's going to happen regardless. You could be 20, you could be 35, and you're still going to feel like that after that play. But they haven't created any sort of safe space for him to make mistakes because right now they are fighting tooth and nail for every single point to make the playoffs. And they're not fighting tooth and nail as like a young, upcoming fun team where you're like, this is exciting. They're in it. They're fighting tooth and nail as like a veteran team where it's like, this is pathetic if they don't make the playoffs. Like, that's the kind of like feeling I get from the fan base, right? Where it's more like, this is embarrassing if you don't make it. Like, it's not like you win that game and people are like, awesome. Like, they're just like, jubilation because
They
they're
are
doing
not the
it.
San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, right. They're not the 2016 Leafs where it's like awesome. Connor Brown scored against Pitt. Curtis McElhinney made a sick save on Pittsburgh, who I think rested Malkin that night. Like you kind of go through it, right? Like it's a completely different vibe. And so I don't know if they had to do it to him. I don't know if he's necessarily getting better here as the season goes along. I'd probably say he's getting worse. I do think he's had some moments though. You know, obviously the overtime goal against Philly. He had a really big goal against Columbus, leading to a win. That tying goal, that was a great shot. He has had moments. I'm not sitting here saying that he's been up this whole time and he's done, you know,
He's helped them
sweet
win
F all.
games at
He
times, like
he
genuinely.
he absolutely has. And had they started him in the minors, I do think he would have had to have come up anyway, just given all the injuries that they had. But I think
Probably.
they could have done a better job of like letting him build a little bit to get up there. You know, like that's what happened with Fraser Minton last year, right? Like he started and then he came up and then he went back down and he's having a really good year with Boston now. Like he's up to like 12 goals. Um, so he's kind of, shot off a little bit here, to his credit, but he did get the benefit of learning in the American League. And when Boston traded for him, they also sent him down to the minors. They didn't bring him up. Like he had a hat trick right away in the American League. And so, he's just a recent example. There's obviously a million. And it's a weird now it's a bit awkward for me if Neil when Nylander returns because I don't think Cowan should be in the lineup. I don't think he's better than any of their top nine forwards right now, other than if Nyes is going to be this hurt and terrible. Like I wouldn't play him over Michelli. I wouldn't play him over Robertson. Then you have three centers. That's a non-discussion. You could actually argue Domi to some theory, in theory, but you're not obviously taking Domi off the top line at this point, and he's definitely not better than McMahon or Nylander. And then that leaves you a fourth line, which is a checking line. You can get away with putting Cowan there for a game against Vancouver or a game against Calgary. But when they go on the road right after the Olympics and play Tampa, Florida, do you want him on that line? No. For
No,
what? D zone draws to go through the lane? It's a waste. So now you're like, okay, well, are you just going to send him down for the first time? It's a bit of a weird spot for me.
I think, I mean, I think at the very least, they're in a position where, in terms of how they might message that to him, if that ends up happening, I'm skeptical it would happen. It does seem like Berube just has a belief in him and really likes him. But you can say, like, we are fighting for our playoff lives here, and we're just not, every point is so valuable. We're not able to give you the time that you need. Like, we need the battle tested guy, we need the Yarncroke in there, and I'm not one to ride to Yarncroke's defense very often because I think he's having a pretty brutal season. Although, harping on the 12th forward in the lineup, not like many teams are getting that much out of that player. it's it is a bit of a predicament, but also like you kind of at the same point, like you talk about what is the point of the season? If the point of the season is to make the playoffs, which is how they're treating it at this moment, that could change. But right now, the point of the season is to make the playoffs. Well, you got to do what you got to do to make the playoffs. Like it is it is a business, and like it's not like Easton Cowan. Again, it's not you didn't draft him first overall. He's not necessarily like the future of the franchise, and you're worried about hurting his feelings. Like it is a bit odd the way things have played out. But if you got to do it, then it it's not the biggest deal in the world either.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. Like they're trying to make the playoffs right now. I do think that there's certain games where you can look at it and say, I think he makes more sense in that lineup. Right? Like again, if you're playing Calgary and Vancouver, I think it's fair to sit there and say, you know what, let's get a little bit extra scoring touch in here up and down the lineup because they aren't necessarily flush with stars that you're, I don't want to say not worried about checking because that's disrespectful. Like Nazem Kadri is a good player. Vancouver does have a few good players. Not to say they have nobody, but I think you could look at those games a little bit more reasonably and say, yeah, you know what? Like let's go for some depth scoring here.
It's
But
okay to do that too. It's okay to bring him in and out of the lineup. Again, like
yeah,
ideal world, he would play every possible game because that's where he is in his development curve. But like it's okay to do that. They did it earlier in the season. We've kind of gotten out of the healthy scratch zone because Joshua's been hurt for this extended period of time. And so we haven't really been cycling guys in and out. But like it wasn't so long ago when that was something that was not only happening, but sort of praised as being something that was helping the team win. And if you go back to that, and if
they should be
something,
doing it. Jacob
yeah,
Quillen should be getting into the lineup. There's a
give it
few
a
guys
go.
that are begging to get healthy scratched right now.
I
Begging
mean,
again.
even if I don't know, you talk about like how Cowan's not going to replace Domi on the first line, and he shouldn't, and we talk about Domi a lot and how he fits in the line. But like, don't if Domi has three awful games in a row, he's someone who could be vulnerable to a scratch. We saw it at some earlier in the season. He could throw Cowan there for one game against a not super intimidating opponent. Like there are things you can do as long as you kind of accept the idea that this is not set in stone. And he is not a player who's earned the right to be in the top nine in the lineup no matter what. Because, of course, he just hasn't accomplished enough at the NHL level for that to be true about him.
Yeah, and so it's an interesting run here. They also looked gassed in the third period against Detroit.
That was a brutal
It was
period.
awful. And look, I get it. If you're the defense, fair game. There was five of them all night. What
Yeah,
were the forwards'
100%.
excuse? I was watching the forwards. I was like, none of these guys can skate. No one can forecheck. You have 12. What's your problem? Nyes missed a few shifts. What? The whole forward group fell apart for that. Like, I don't understand. So on principle alone, Quillen comes in for me. I'm like, fresh legs. Like, I can't watch it. You guys need some sort of pop of energy. He comes in, you hope he blacks out for a night or something. Just add some wheels and some youthful enthusiasm right now to the group, which is funny because we just talked about Callan, but he's not youthful enthusiasm right now. He's struggling with confidence, never worked through a problem in pro hockey before, and is, getting hit by the wall of it all in front of our faces at this very moment. So it's not youthful enthusiasm there at this second. Uh, so I'm not even necessarily saying Cowan should sit, but Quillen for me is coming in. I would be heavily debating as to who's coming out, and I'd also be wondering what the deal is with Nyes because I just couldn't watch that feasibly on a night-to-night basis right now. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's
something for a
another
shot in
one
the arm.
where it feels like feelings are being preserved a little bit. Like you gotta come and say, like, you're not helping the team right now. Like right
Terrible.
now, you're not in the form that you are right now. Like you're simply an ineffective hockey. Obviously, you probably don't phrase it exactly like this, but like, I think that a lot of times hockey players are
No,
conditioned, they got to be tough and they got to play through everything. But at a certain point, you are a negative on the team. And so
it,
you are playing through something. You're just eating up a spot on the second line. You're eating up a spot on the power play. And like Nyes is an issue right now. He is.
it wasn't obviously why they lost the game seven, but it was like game seven he shouldn't have played. He was awful. He couldn't move. And I do respect trying to gut it out, especially on a team that very often sits at the earliest inconvenience that impacts them. But he was so bad and unable to do anything that it was just a wasted roster spot that night. And it made that line worse. And like everything about it was problematic. And so yeah, I think what you're saying, Tim, now is simply look, like if you're in, you're in. There's no like you're in, but you're playing hurt, so it's okay. It's like if you're in, like you're just considered a player. Like you can't be playing with an asterisk on playing poorly. Like either you dress and you get after it or you watch, but you can't be doing this. And so that's kind of where I'd be at with him. Also understanding and respecting that he does want to play. Like I do. Like I have a ton of respect for guys that are gutting things out and playing through pain and clearly he is um I think it's easy from the outside looking in to be like, yeah, suck it up or whatever. Um but when it just hits a point where the play is so poor, which I think it has been, that you can't justify it anymore. And I think we're kind of at that, he's on an 8 game goalless drought. He's 7 shots in his last 8 games, like fanning on pucks in the slot, not getting pucks out, can't forecheck. Like it's tough right now. I'm actually like in a messed up way, I was like almost happy to hear that he's hurt because I was like, thank God, like he can't be this, like this isn't him. Like
No.
it's nice to know there's a reason. Like that's why. Like I'm not happy he's hurt. It was more to say, like, okay, it's not just like he's going through like a particularly bad stretch of play for just whatever. Like he's not just like, has the yips or some like confidence thing. It was just like, okay, there's actually like a physical reason that's causing this. Um, because you still look at the top line, and I know McMahon, Matthews, and Domi have been pretty good, but they're still getting outscored in their
Yeah.
minutes at 5-on-5. And, last night was a specific night for me where I was like, that line's terrible. Like, they can't go on the ice. They got actively tilted all night. They gave up their only goal in regulation on just an absolutely brutal sequence, and they produced nothing. And so the whole thing, I was like, man, it'd be nice if Nyes was feeling good because I would have moved Nyes up there. It would have been nice if William Nylander was in the lineup. I would have moved him up there. It's like you kind of go through it. So yeah, I think you kind of like to wrap it all up. Like I'm Brad Tree Living. I'm going in saying we got 8 games here until the Olympics. Guys got to dig in, and we got to get points because if you don't, we're going to start making changes, and you're not going to like them. But we're not, we're not doing this sitting on the fence thing. That's the worst possible thing. It's almost certainly the path that they will go, unfortunately. But I would be going in saying either I'm going to start making changes or you're going to give me a reason not to. You have
Yeah.
8 games right here.
It is going to be a crucial stretch. Next time we record, and we'll have an even better sense of what that looks like. I think you said it well in the sense that there is a difference between what might be the right way to proceed and the way that is most likely the team will proceed. But at the same time, let's not bury Treliving for things that haven't happened yet. Maybe he will make some amazing forward-thinking moves that will be in the best interest of the franchise. That is an outcome that is possible. But we'll just have to wait a little bit to see it. We appreciate everybody who listened in. We appreciate it more when you're leaving ratings, reviews, watching us on YouTube as well. And we'll be back with you again next week.